In this episode, we are answering listener questions. We address the generational gap in the spiritual world, clarify human desire questions, and even discuss how an offhand comment led to a really cool discovery by our listeners.
Let's talk about what intuition really is.
Let's look at all the places intuition and ego show up in your life.
Let's share honestly.
Let's do the research.
I'm Jamie Hayhurst.
I'm Heather Wood.
This is the Intuitive Girls Guide.
Hey, Jay.
Hey.
We're back in the new year.
We are. Welcome.
Yeah, I just wanted to start by telling you that technology is kicking my ass today.
A little bit.
Jamie can attest. I would say this is like a great example of how this year has started for me.
Accurate. It's a microcosm.
My ass has been kicked. I've been sick.
Yep.
I still feel like you can hear it in my voice.
A little bit.
Yeah. We're doing our best.
Aren't we all?
We're here.
I hope we all are.
And we decided to kick things off with answering your questions.
Yeah.
Maybe like addressing a couple comments. I try not to do that, like crappy ones, but sometimes it gets thrown in the mix as an interesting discussion.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I would love to tell you that if I include a name, it's because I feel like the question was okay for me to. If I read it verbatim, I feel like there was no personal stuff that I feel like I couldn't share. If I'm saying like maybe a name, but I'm just being kind of general, it's because sometimes people send in like messages that I feel like maybe some of the stuff is personal or just for you and me to read.
Definitely personal.
So that's why you're like, why is she reading that one fully but just referencing this one?
Right.
That's why. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, I'd rather protect people's privacy than read you exactly what they wrote.
Agreed.
But the one I'm kicking us off with is actually one we just kind of got under the wire as we were doing this. Mm-hmm. But I liked it a lot. And it's from Maribel.
Yep.
And she's in Mexico.
She is.
Yeah. Shout out to Mexico. Yeah. So I felt like I could read part of hers.
Yeah.
And I think she would.
No, she seemed amenable to that.
Okay. So this one is, can your two main desires be variety and certainty? Now, I'm just going to cut in here and say, if you haven't listened to our episode on human desires, go and do that. But I'll give you a little bit of an idea of what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. So she goes on to say, I'm confused because I've identified someone who was both. And although you mentioned they are opposites, I'd love to understand them more deeply. Can desires change as you change, just like values might change as we grow? Okay. Excellent question.
Yes.
And I love a question about the desires.
Yes,
I'm always
That's why I immediately forwarded it
for that. Yeah. Okay. So first, I just want to say to the second part of her question, because it's easier to answer. Mm-hmm. Can desires change as you change? Yes, they can. I would say for the majority of people in your top two, there's probably been at least one of them that stayed constant your whole life. Mm-hmm. Is that true for every single person? No, I would say that's true for the majority of the people. Mm-hmm. But then I would say what's also true for the majority of the people is like the evolution of one of those. Right. Okay. And you can also have in different areas of your life,
100%,
different desires that act more prevalent or are stronger or kick in more when you're doing that thing. Like your desires you sort of experience more at work might be different than what you experience like in your relationship or when you're with your friends. Like it absolutely can. Can like circumstances change that? You bet. All of these things can change it.
Right.
Now, do they change like on a whim or every few months or something like that? No. I would say that maybe they shift and change once or twice in your lifetime.
Yeah. A couple times maybe.
Yeah. And again, there can be exceptions to all of these things because they're intuitive. Mm-hmm. So like we always say, there's no 10-step program for things. There's no exact thing. Same for this. Right. Is there a human out there or a group of humans out there that like theirs have changed 5 times? I bet. I bet there is.
Right.
Is that common?
No.
Not really.
No.
Okay. And believe it or not, it's not so much trauma that changes your desires. They can change your fears up more with trauma. But it's sort of like kind of life milestones, entering into different phases of your life that will shift those kinds of things.
That's a good point.
Okay. So to the main question here, can your top two be certainty and variety? Is it possible in the realm of possibilities? Mm-hmm. Maybe. But I don't think that's the case.
Yeah.
I would say it wouldn't make a ton of sense for your top two desires to be both certainty and variety.
Agreed.
Okay. Now, as two great examples of certainty and variety in the top, like it's not really in my top two, but I would say it's like a real close number 3 for me. Okay. Yeah. For certainty and you for variety.
Yep.
I can tell you that there are different parts of our lives or different scenarios that we might be in where the two would switch, where you would see Jamie jump into certainty and me jump into variety. So I just want to say, like, you can see those traits in people more, even though they're not in the top two.
Right.
There are things that I do and I enter into where I feel like part of my role is to bring variety and change.
Yep.
Even though I'm a certainty person.
That's true.
Okay.
Right.
So it's kind of the way that you can sort of look at this, like when you're noticing both certainty and variety a lot in somebody, is to start to look at like, what is the thing driving them? Not necessarily what are they like bringing to the table. Okay. Like what's the thing driving them and how are they operating to bring that thing?
Right.
That will kind of answer it for you.
Yep.
So, for example, even if I'm bringing variety to something, the variety would be brought with a lot of structure.
Yep.
Okay. So that's a real red flag that's a certainty person operating in a variety capacity.
Right.
Now, if you were to be bringing certainty into something, you would be doing it with a lot of variety involved. Like your methods would include variety to do it. So it's a little bit of a spoiler as to how, like, what's really behind the thing.
Yes. And I was going to say, like, I was thinking how I'm a variety person everywhere, but certainly when it comes to work.
Yes.
And how I'm more of a certainty person when it comes to relationships.
Yes.
But the certainty actually is not what you're talking about, like structure, routine. The certainty that I'm talking about with that is actually love and connection.
Yeah.
It's like I'm looking for the love and connection. And so I use certainty as like a vehicle for that. So if you think you're seeing both in one person, you might be reading the certainty as like actually something else.
I think that's a really awesome point because especially with certainty and variety, and I think this over all of the other ones, these two are ones that are attached to other desires.
Right.
Okay. So you're using the love and connection example, which is a great one. So when you feel the desire for love and connection, because we use all the desires, it's not like just because they're in your top two, it doesn't mean you drop kick the other ones out. Everybody uses all of them. Okay.
Right.
But when it, like you're saying, when I go when I start desiring love and connection, the vehicle in which I'm going to use to get there might be variety, but I'm looking for a lot of stability and I'm looking for a lot of certainty in it.
Right.
Okay. So it's like when I'm desiring that, when I have it, when I'm experiencing it, I like there to be certainty around it.
Right.
That is you in love and connection, believe it or not in certainty, not in variety. It's just like they're kind of like coupling to help you.
Right, exactly. Because as an abandonment person, certainty feels like an easy road to take.
Yeah.
To get to not being abandoned.
Yeah. Like
if you're here all the time, if you're not leaving, then I'm not abandoned.
Yes.
But what I'm actually looking for is the loving connection.
And that brings up another fantastic point, Jamie.
Thank you.
Well, it's probably because you have a cute scarf on. It's like extra making your points really good. Which is that you don't usually use your main desires in response to your main fear.
Right.
Okay. You usually use one of the others. Okay. So, and it's usually not one of your main ones. So like, for example, if I start to feel rejection, I'm going to use variety.
Right. Oh, really?
Yes. Because I think at the core, same as your belief and true for any fear, but if we're talking about the three main fears, which is abandonment, rejection, and fraud, right? You feel that at the core of your being, who you are naturally is subject to that.
Right.
As if those things are flawed.
Right.
Okay. So I think that this certainty and these traits about me that I think are really like really a part of who I am,
right,
are subject to rejection because I believe as a person I'm rejected often.
Good point.
Same as you believe the variety elements of you are connected to people abandoning you because you feel like those are core parts of who you are.
That's a great point.
So it's really about like excavating more.
Yep.
A great thing that you can do if you are like, I think like both of us, certainly like me, where you're like noticing people's desires and you're trying to like suss out things, is to like ask further questions of the person when it comes to things that get them excited, which will tell you like what makes them go towards desire, and things that make them afraid.
Right.
And you'll see their responses with desire and you'll see their responses with fear, and it will kind of help separate them a little bit. But it doesn't make a ton of sense that you would be equally driven, or at least close to equally driven by desire with both certainty and variety. Again, could it happen?
Yeah.
Of course it could happen.
Right.
Do I think that's what's going on? No.
Probably not.
I suspect that you have a variety person in front of you, and that whatever way you're connected, I'll just say it's work, that they bring a lot of certainty into the workplace, even though they're a variety person.
Yes.
That is what I suspect is happening in what you're seeing. And I think if you sort of excavate a little lower, you'll find more info.
Agreed.
And like, think about if that person was to brag or sort of try to sell themselves, like market themselves, which traits would they market to you? Variety, or would they market certainty? Like, notice that with people. People are always marketing themselves in some way or another, right? So look at that and you'll kind of get more answers.
Got it.
Okay. Anything else there?
No, I love it.
Okay. The second question. I already know what you're going to say about this. I think you're going to find my answer to it interesting. But this is from Amanda. But this is not just from Amanda. I get this, or a form of this question all the time. You get it as well. And that is, do you guys have any tools or books to recommend about becoming more intuitive or growing as a medium or all of this? Okay. And
what's your answer?
I feel like I fail everyone in this.
Yeah. I mean, I would have a longer list of people not to go to.
So I just want to take a minute to explain why. And I also am going to cut you off because I already know you're going to say it. I will write a book about it someday. Okay.
I mean, we've been waiting.
I know. So let me confess something to you. Let's have a therapy moment, Jamie, where you can therapize me a little bit. I suffer a little bit from the thought of like, I'm not the right person for this because I feel a little jaded about the industry. And I know, I can hear it, that means I probably should do it.
That's exactly what this industry needs.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, I feel like it's not what people actually want. Like, they want the fancy, like, you got to get struck by lightning on a full moon story to, understand intuition or how to become a medium or to do all these things. And that would not be my version.
No, but the people listening to this podcast who are asking you know that that's not what they're getting from you. They want this version of the answer, which is there is no real answer and there is no 10-step program. Like they know that. So that's the book they want.
Yeah. And you know what? I do have a lot of advice about it. I do have a lot of things to say about it. I've done, I would say almost everything that you could try to do in the industry. And I've been there. I just feel like when I walk into a room of other mediums, or if I walk into a room of other people who sort of sell themselves in some way as spiritual or holistic or whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
That like, this is probably my, like, I'm the weird kid here
voice,
mister. Yeah. But like, I don't feel like we have the same way of looking at all of this.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I like about you.
Okay.
That's what sets you apart. Like, you know what I mean? That's why people like us in this podcast, because we're not like that.
So I would like to. I think I've written it in my head a lot of times, and I would very much like to give people a resource. Because I remember what it felt like to want those resources and how difficult it is to seek out. But I do want to not just say we don't like anything. I do want to, as true as that might be, I kind of want to talk about just for a minute, like why, like what's going on that like I'm not recommending any books to you, or I'm not saying go follow this person.
Mm-hmm.
I will just say real quick that forever my favorite medium has been John Edwards, but he's a little grouchy. So like,
yes,
I like that about him.
Yeah,
like he doesn't pull any punches. He doesn't care to fake anything, but sometimes he also doesn't care to explain. So take that with what you will. But if you were like, who should I like follow to kind of learn a little bit?
Is that what this question about? Is it about mediumship?
I combined them.
Okay.
Amanda's was specifically about mediumship, but there were a lot of like, can you direct me towards a book? And I'm about mediumship, about intuition. Growing my intuition.
I mean, that's the thing, is it's
this
such
journey.
Yeah. So like that, that's, first of all, that's more than one book.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like I'm sure she was asking for a collection of them, but like when you're writing your book, you can't write one book about intuition. Right. It has to be like one book about general intuition, and then you can make more books,
deep dive into the other things.
About mediumship and blah, all that stuff. But like it's such a wide umbrella, or casts such a like wide net. Yeah. But sorry, go ahead about John Edwards. I just wanted to say.
No, that's all. I was just saying, like, I'm trying to give someone, and I personally like him.
I think there are many, many talented mediums out there.
I mean, too, but
that's actually that's the topic I would criticize least, actually.
I agree with you. However, where I get like a little butt clenchy is when they start to teach other people mediumship. I don't find a lot of people who are mediums who also do that, because not every medium wants to teach mediumship, right?
Right.
When I go to see that, there's a little bit of like a letdown for me in how somebody does that.
So what I think the problem with that is that a lot of mediums who are teaching mediumship are teaching the way they do mediumship without actually understanding how all the clairs work, or how all different types of energetic bodies work. Yeah. So like, which is fine, because to be a medium, you don't actually have to understand all of that. You have to understand how your body works. Yeah. But it's a different thing to try to teach it, because people learn and intuit in different ways. Exactly. That's where the problem lies. So like, if you're going to be teaching mediumship, you have to know about all of that stuff.
100%. I would also say that I don't think you and I are alone in our feelings of sort of, I think discourse might be the right word in the industry, because I think in most of the questions, the reason they're asking us is because they don't want the sort of quote unquote old school teachings. So I just wanted to address that for a minute, because I don't, even though I would never argue with the fact that somebody like said that we can be critical of things or whatever. Remember that person who said we brought them into into a macro mindset, because remember that criticism, because like they could never just enjoy thinking about intuition. They also had to think about feelings. And I was like, that intuition is feeling. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like that doesn't make any sense.
Saying we were being a bad time, that we were being Debbie Downers for for being honest. Well, sorry, like that's what the whole fucking problem is.
And that's what intuition actually is. Right. But anyways, I just thought of that because it makes
we didn't make this podcast for you guys to chill out and like relax while listening. That was not the intention of this podcast.
I think that shows you this divide.
Correct.
And I want to point out an episode that we did that I actually think will help you understand this more, which is the Indigos, Crystals, and Rainbows episode.
Yes.
If you go and listen to that, I think you'll understand why there is this gap. And this is going to sound a little bit trippy. So if you don't know about Indigos, Crystals, and Rainbows, just think of it as like generationally.
I was going to say, if you're a younger generation, we've already lost you saying those terms. Yeah. It's just, they're different generations.
Yeah. So just think of it generationally, and think about how it relates to how you use your intuition and how intuition is brought into the mainstream.
Yes.
Okay. So there are two waves of indigos. There's the wave that is in front of you and I. So there are people a little bit older than us.
Older Gen X.
Yes.
Young boomers, older Gen X.
Yes. And then there is the second wave of indigos, which is like our age. We're in our early 40s.
Younger Gen X,
mid to
older
early
millennial.
40s. Exactly.
Right.
Okay. So in this, the older indigos, okay, the first wave of indigos, the oldies, they're really not that much older than us, so we're allowed
relatively.
To say that. Yeah, okay. When they came in with intuition, they came in with it in the way that you got to think of how the sort of new age movement happened in the 70s.
Right.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So they came in having to break down the walls, very patriarchal walls,
right,
by having to make intuition very trippy and weird
and psychedelic,
right, yep, to appeal to people who were rebelling against the patriarchal standards and the status quo, so they could come in and then they could find it, and they had to make it unusual and like quote unquote special,
right,
and mystical for it to be put on TV, right, or for it to be noticed. They had to do that. That was how the wall had to be broken down. You can actually even see that in astrology.
Yep.
I don't remember exactly, but I know the sign was in like Pisces, like in Aquarius, and it like switched, and it you can see all of it.
Yep.
Okay. So although I do feel quick to criticize that, I also try, and I think you do too, to like say like it had to be done that way.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
What I think the thing that is hard is that a lot of that generation then never learned, like, okay, now how do we shift into the energy that's needed now?
Well, you're seeing that across that entire generation.
Yes.
Of boomers into older Gen X.
Yes.
There's this inability to let go. There's an inability to adapt.
Yes.
Like you see boomers can't adapt to technology. You see boomers like getting faked out by AI because they cannot adapt to how fast life is changing.
Yep.
And you see that in intuition also, that you see this like older generation of intuitive people. They are just almost like looking down their noses at us now.
Yes.
And I don't think they even realize that they're doing it.
I agree. So I am interested to sometimes find out that mediums who I would put in that category follow us or me.
Yep.
And I always wonder, like, are you watching to learn and to adjust?
Or they hate watching?
Yeah. And I think it might be the second a lot of the time, to be honest.
That's okay.
But here's the problem, or one of the problems, okay? That generation came in and they did that, and they had to do it that way. I fully believe that. I don't blame them. But they also did a lot of shitty things when they did that.
Right.
And I think we can blame that they didn't know better, but some of them are really clinging to those
Still
things.
doing it.
Cultural appropriation.
Correct.
Again, making intuition not accessible for everyone, making it something that's quote
only
unquote
special. People
yeah. Okay.
Right.
And then in the second wave of indigos, for some other reason, we're quieter. And because the generation ahead of us never really could adjust to doing things differently. And this is certainly not true for all of them. I know I'm generalizing. There are plenty of examples of people who don't do that. But you see this sort of like this, my generation, our group of indigos trying to come in and break down those walls and make it different and make it accessible and sort of show how it was in all different cultures. And these are not new concepts. It's not so mystical. We all can use it.
Right.
The generation above us of indigos resent that because they had to do the hardest part.
Correct.
It's way easier for us to go like, let's fix all the shit you didn't do right than to have actually broken down those walls. Right.
Exactly.
And then the generations below us, because the second wave of indigos, for whatever reason, hasn't hit like mainstream sort of, I don't know if fame's the right word, but like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the people say stuff to us like, oh, you guys are so unique. And I think, no, I think it's just unique that we're vocal
saying it,
or that we have like traction or a platform, or we've been lucky enough to have a lot of people listen to our podcast.
Right.
So this is what's playing out now.
Yes.
Okay. And so when I walk into those rooms of intuitive people, I kind of always assume they're all first wave indigos or believers of how the first wave indigos operate. And I end up, and so do you, with our beliefs being a bit of a threat to them.
Yep.
And so there's this internal stress, and you go like, well, why aren't there more resources like the second wave of indigos see stuff? Great question.
Yeah.
I think you'll see it soon.
Yeah.
I think our age group probably had small children for a while. Like I think there's a lot of factors there that we'll know someday. but maybe the world had to change a little more. I don't know.
Yeah, I also feel like, unfortunately, there's a good segment of the like intuitive people of our generation that have been pulled down the white supremacy pipeline, or down like I hate saying this, it sounds so dumb, the MAHA pipeline, Make America Healthy Again, like this sort of like toxic wellness pipeline.
Yeah.
So like I think that there was like a larger chunk of us.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I'm thinking of people.
I know. We're probably thinking of the same people.
who like were like, we were sort of in the same sort of peer groups.
Yeah.
Right. And now like I see them and they're completely off.
Yeah. Off the rails.
Yes. And they've gone right down, they've slid so fast right down the pipeline into like, whether it's like trad wife stuff or like wellness culture or whatever it is.
Anti-vax.
Right. It's like, and so, and they lost the intuition.
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of intuition got lost on a big segment of that population, unfortunately.
Yeah.
They think they're being intuitive.
Yeah.
But they're operating from a place of fear and judgment.
Yeah.
And that's not intuition.
I'd like to say something, but I want to sort of set it up right, because it's like a very poor little white girl statement.
Okay, great.
But I feel as though it might help people understand why people were so primed for that pipeline.
Okay.
Why white women in this industry are so primed for it.
Okay.
Okay. So I am only speaking as a white woman here, and I want to make that really clear, because it would be very unfair for me to speak of this experience for anybody else.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So when you are leaving the confines of patriarchy, however that looks for you,
right?
When you break up with the way the world is set up and you realize what's going on, when the jig is up, there is a grief to that.
Yep.
To the fact that maybe people in your family who you loved like supported this idea and like
still
brought this idea to you and still do and operate with some of these beliefs. There's this feeling of like, why didn't people do more of this breaking of generational trauma? Why is it on me? There's a lot of complicated
why did I waste so much of my life believing this, feeling this? Yep.
Yeah, you feel very tricked and you feel very let down and you feel like the rose-colored glasses you saw the world with are off.
Right.
And again, I hear all the privilege in the things that I'm saying. I mean it as an explanation.
Right,
not
but that is your experience.
Not that I need anyone to feel bad for.
No.
But when you leave there, what happens is you do this like turnaround of 180 degrees and you dive into everything that is not patriarchal, that is outside of that. Okay. And that ends up being a lot of things in different cultures that have been like that we start appropriating. Right. Like you dive into like the beauty of indigenous culture.
Yes.
And then you turn around and start teaching it to other people. And in your mind, your grief of this old and the finding of some new, and it's not just indigenous, it's all kinds of things, right? You grab onto these things that people weren't allowed to practice, and then you start practicing it as a white person.
Right.
It starts to heal, bear with me for a minute, when you find the new.
Right.
And it does something to you and it helps you and you start to grow and understand and your life changes for the better because these beautiful concepts and ideas in these cultures are there and have withstood the test of time for a reason and were trampled and like taken away from people for a reason.
Right.
Because they're powerful.
Right.
And as soon as people start saying to you, you can't do that. Right. Wait a minute.
Yep.
It's like this, you grabbed onto this thing because you were grieving the loss of kind of your own culture.
Right.
If you're like a white American.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And someone says you can't do it anymore. A lot of those people will then not stop and do that work.
Correct.
They're too tapped there.
Yep.
And they get thrown right down that pipe. They're primed for it.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, I realize the privilege in that, but I feel like if we can understand it, we can treat it better so that we don't see this problem so often.
Well, and I think this explanation is for other white women.
Exactly.
Like you're not saying this explanation to explain it to people of color or Black people or anyone else. You're saying it so that our white listeners might hear that in themselves.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I'm doing right now. Or, oh, that's why I saw that TikTok that said, don't sage anymore. But I love saging. Why not? Yeah. This is why. Like that explanation is for white people to understand the process of what's happening to you.
And it makes me want to shout our voices as loud as I can, because I want you to know there's still a place you can come.
Right.
Come this way.
Right.
You will have to confront shit that you don't want to let go of. And not just the cultural appropriated shit.
Right.
You'll have to sit with your own stuff that's hard. But a lot of people can't do that.
Right.
And so you see this. And so why are we so tight-lipped about read this book or follow these people or here's all these great resources or welcome to my 10-step program for this? Why haven't we written the book yet? Why, like, all of that is the reason.
I know
that was long.
The only thing I would add to that is that, like, I oftentimes have people that, like, I feel like, oh, this is a great book or this is a great person to follow or listen to or whatever. And unfortunately, I'm just waiting for the shoe to drop.
Yeah, for them to be shitty all
for
of a
them
sudden.
to slide down whatever pipeline it is that they're on, or to say some terrible fucking thing and be like, oh, well, I just recommended that book to everybody and it was great. That book was great, but now everything they say is tainted by their privilege or their misogyny or white supremacy or whatever it is. And so it's like, unfortunately, in this capitalistic oligarchical hellscape, that's what's influencing, no matter how, like, pure your intentions are, no matter how pure our intentions are, we are constantly checking ourselves. You and I are constantly running like checks on ourselves, personally and with each other. Like, hey, is that right? Or have I lost the plot? Like, like, why am I saying this? What's influencing this thought? Like, is this fascism? I mean, I think that's myself all the time. Is that fascism? Why did that thought just pop in my head?
I think one of the most common frustrations I have, like, inwardly is, like, patriarchal conditioning choking me.
Correct.
And it's like, sometimes it's fucking sneaky, Jamie. I know. You're like, wait a minute.
Exactly. Right.
And you have to catch it. And so,
but we're not taught in this country to do that kind of work. We're not taught to be, like, emotionally intelligent. We're not taught to critically think. We are taught the opposite of all those things. They don't want us to do any of those things.
Right.
So it's so much work.
Yeah. And the reason that we are not like, oh, hey, like, there was a time where both of us would have directed people to Dr. Christiane Northrup.
Oh, yes. Years ago. Yes. So not any time in the recent future.
But you know what I'm saying? And then the pipeline grabbed her and dragged her down. And so imagine if we had said, go listen to that. So that's what I mean. So careful of who we tell you to go see or a resource to do, because, like, I don't want to put you at risk of the pipeline either. Like,
correct.
You know what I mean? Correct. And I understand how devastating it is when somebody you really, like, look up to and like, starts saying questionable shit.
But if you don't have those critical thinking skills or those, like, the social media awareness that, like, actually just needs to be taught, like, people need to learn how to,
should be a class in school, honestly.
Like, we even said in our Dr. No episode that, like, her first books on women's health,
excellent,
incredible,
groundbreaking.
But we cannot say, go read Dr. Christiane Northrup's first book.
Yeah.
Because then if we're not there holding your hand the whole time and you say, this book is great, I'm going to read the next one. And then her next one. And next thing you know, you're on Telegram saying that there are aborted babies in vaccines. There's not. But that's what she's telling you. So it's like you can't even go back to the good stuff. Because that pipeline, I know I've said it thrice so far in this episode, but they're so violent and they're so tricky that, like, once you put one foot on that pipeline, you're on your ass sliding down it. And, like, you've got to be careful.
Yeah, you're at risk all the time. You have to be so careful. So I know that was long-winded, but I feel like it was really important because I don't want people to think it's like, oh, well, we don't get anything from recommending that. that's not how we roll. I actually feel uncomfortable if somebody is like,
that's weird.
Some of my own conditioning too. Like, I don't need to get paid to like recommend you. I just like think you're great, you know?
Yes.
Like maybe don't
we tell you
sponsor us
things.
This sponsor, because I'm not really sure I want my name attached to that. Like, so
right.
We are just incredibly careful is why.
Right. And so should you be.
And even if somebody you trust recommends it, please keep your critical thinking cap on, because you never know.
And just stay open and be intuitive. Like, you'll start to get the little baby red flags when you're reading something or watching a video, and you'll be like, oh.
Yeah.
And just listen to those. Don't ignore them.
And don't follow just one person. Like, if you like, if mediumship is the thing you want to learn, go look at like 10 different mediums and like how they do it. And so like the more different ways you look at it, the better, and also the less at risk you are to be dragged into a bad place.
Yep.
All right. On that note, I think we should take a quick break, and then we'll be right back.
Okay.
We'll be right back after this short break. You know what goes great with podcast listening?
A great cup of coffee from a great coffee shop.
Yep. Beans roasted in-house, amazing baristas. You know where I'm talking about.
Restoration Coffee. Can we go?
Yes, I need an Americano and maybe a panini too.
Ooh, I need blueberry maple latte and probably a resto bowl.
Ooh, yeah. Check them out and visit restoration-coffee.com.
Let's talk about what we're obsessed with this week. All right, Heather. So I feel like the obsessed segment, I know I've been saying it, Debbie Downer Dungeon, but like
I enjoy it, Debbie Downer.
I don't even know what I'm like trying to say with this.
But can you imagine if we were like only obsessed with happy things right now? Well, in the state of the world, like what that would say about us as people?
That would be a lie, first of all. It'd be a lie.
Yeah.
Because whatever.
Welcome to your macro mindset or whatever that criticism was of us. Yeah.
So I don't even really know what I'm trying to say here. The only thing, I'm obsessed with this, and I think it's because it shows that like the stirrings that you and I have been feeling and talking about on here for years, and other people have been talking, it's not just us, other people have been talking about like, hey, there's a problem here. This is fascism. This is an oligarchy. This is all these things like, hey, pay attention here. I think we're starting to see it on like higher levels.
Yep. And
it makes me feel just like a smidge hopeful.
Oh, okay.
I like to stay realistic. I'm not saying I'm not hopeful.
Yeah.
But I'm practical and I'm realistic.
Yeah.
If nothing else.
And you're in touch with your feelings. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
And so I saw a couple TikToks, and then I looked up some articles just to confirm that it was accurate, and it was saying that one of the lawyers representing Meta dropped Meta.
I saw.
And the reason why,
because you sent it to me.
I sent it to you. And then after I sent it, I checked it because I wanted to be sure. But Mark Lemley, who's also a law professor at Stanford University.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that Meta has many. I'm sure they have dozens of attorneys that work for them, right? His quote, he said, I have fired Meta as a client. And he claimed the Meta boss has embraced, quote, toxic masculinity and neo-Nazi madness. And I think, that people are seeing it and acknowledging it and making choices about it is great. I think the fact that people are actually using those words publicly is actually what I think is exciting.
I agree with you, because what's causing other people, at least this is my observation, to freak the fuck out all of a sudden. Like, are you kidding me? Like, is something that we've been like saying, and people are like, that's a bit extreme.
Exactly.
For so long.
Exactly.
That there's for us anyways, there's a little bit of a relief that they're saying the quiet part out loud now.
Exactly. It's like the sort of the guise of like social and political decorum is falling to the side. Is what actually is exciting me. Like, where everyone feels like, it's this patriarchal trick that we were sold. That like, you have to be polite. You have to be better than them. Don't stoop to their level. This whole thing about like and you see it in politics all the time. That's one of the main problems of the Democratic Party.
Yep. And
especially we're not playing the same game.
Especially of the expectations of women.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, 100%.
So, but like the fact that a Stanford educated lawyer is saying neo-Nazism is actually, I think, huge. That's huge.
If you have been paying attention to astrology, to intuitive people for the last 5 years, you know that America has been dealt the Tower card. I feel like I've said this a lot of times.
100%.
And if you understand tarot, you know, like if someone does my tarot cards and the Tower card comes up, I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah.
But like,
here we go.
We're gonna get somewhere good, but it's gonna fucking suck the whole way. Everything's gonna crumble. It's going to be a slow, terrible burn, but we'll get somewhere good. Okay. That's why you're kind of like, maybe shuffle and deal again, and then it comes back, and you're like, of course. It's still there, right?
I accept the tower now. When I get it, I'm like, okay, all right, buckle up, bitches.
Point being, it's not like it's a good card, but it's a card that also involves a lot of suffering.
It's suffering, but it's suffering for the sake of growth.
Yes.
Right.
So in the Tower card, what you know to be true of the energy of that, and it's not just in tarot, you see this in a lot of different intuitive concepts and a lot of different cultures. When that sort of energy comes, you are going to watch things crumble, but before they crumble, the light shines on it. And then it crumbles. Right. And that's what's happening. So for people like you and I and other intuitive people who know that, the light shines, so you know the next thing is crumble.
Right. Or even like historians, even if you're not, you don't consider yourself intuitive, like
great point.
Historians are seeing these patterns that are, and they're like, oh, here we go. Wait, now we're just waiting. I'm just waiting for this. Like you're waiting for the crumbling to begin because you can see what's happening.
I'd also like to say the hope that I get when somebody in a place of privilege, like this lawyer, who probably has that's going to be like a really lucrative job, decides to walk away on principle.
Correct.
Is a different kind of hope that I get.
Exactly.
Because we need more of that.
Yeah. I mean, the bar is in hell. Everyone should be doing that. If we all did that, we'd be living in a much better society.
But it's the responsibility of the people with privilege to be doing it.
Correct. And so the fact that this guy is doing that makes me feel a little bit of hope.
Same. Okay, so it's all crumbling. Hold on, buckle up.
Yeah, it'll be all right eventually.
Eventually. All right, I have our next question that came in.
Okay.
This is from Jill.
Okay.
And she said, can you talk about why one side seems so much more vocal than the other in the current political climate? And then I cut out the rest because there was very personal things about people in her life. But she means... why are like the Trumpy Republican, really like MAGA culty people so much louder than the liberal Democrats?
Well, some of it is what I just said in the Obsessed segment.
Yeah.
The social decorum.
Yeah.
Yep.
I first of all, it's true and it's a problem. Okay. If you want to understand why, you have to look a little bit at human behavior. And this is in no means to justify it. Okay. But there is a feeling of people will do the right thing. Okay? So people who believe in the sanctity of what the right thing and the wrong thing is. Okay? People who believe that people should care about other humans. Empathic people. Are inclined naturally to think that eventually people will do the right thing, or if given reason, people will do the right thing. So to not cause too many waves, because eventually they'll realize they're wrong and they'll do the quote unquote right thing. Okay. This is a trait of empaths, because when it comes to perspective, you don't understand what it's like to feel less empathy than to feel more. Okay. Whether it's by design, like the spectrum you were born on, or due to trauma, or whatever other fear you've got going on. Okay. This is such a huge problem. And I don't know if it is because we've very clearly established that my brain is wired very differently than other people's. What I struggle with personally is how have you gotten to adulthood without being devastated by how terrible humans are? Like, I don't, why are you still thinking people are going to do the quote unquote right thing? Why are you expecting that of other humans? Like, why haven't you been crushed by that at like age 6 or something? Like, that is what bothers my brain.
Right. Well, and I think you can see that like sort of very glaringly with Roe v. Wade. And that in like the first Trump administration and people saying they'll never take away Roe. We'll never lose Roe. They're not going to do that. They're being dramatic. They're crazy. You know, it's gone. Yeah. Like it's gone. So like you can't just expect the government to take care of you. Right. You can't expect the government to do the right thing. The government's going to do what's best for the government.
Exactly. And I think people have a lot of trouble understanding that there are a lot of people who are not incredibly emotionally intelligent. And if you take what I think our party does a lot wrongly, is use emotionally intelligent language to people who are not emotionally intelligent. And then you lose the plot completely. You're not speaking to the thing. It's sort of like, you know, all the cult documentaries that we like to watch. When you're watching them and the people on the outside are just saying to the people on the inside, like, just stop. That's crazy. They're not actually understanding the psychology of what's happened. And so because I think as a group of people have been way too quiet and accepting for too long, this is what happens. And then people don't want to cause a problem. People don't want to not be liked.
Yes.
I mean, you know, both of us get real, like, kind of annoyed when people call us brave for speaking out. I appreciate the compliment. I realize that you're meaning it nicely, but it frustrates me because I'm like, well, why aren't you?
Well, everyone should be, and then it wouldn't be brave. It would just be normal. It would just be part of how we affect change.
Yeah. So it's a problem. Yeah. If I go and I say what I believe, there are going to be a group of people who don't like me. Or it could be people who don't go to my husband's coffee shop because they saw something I posted. There could be people who don't listen to my podcast because of it. But you have to get to a point, especially if you're privileged enough, to go, it's more important to me that other people's rights are protected.
I also think that one thing we should address in this is that, like, I think the propaganda we receive through media is so intentional, but like the sort of ultra patriotism, ultra militarism that we see in movies and TVs, I think that really feeds into people people trusting. That everything's going to be okay and that the quote unquote good guys are going to win. But we actually have it shifted as to who the good guys and the bad guys are. And like, it's not, I mean, it is, listen, I don't want to launch us into a tangent.
Launch away, babe.
How do I say this succinctly? A lot lately we've been hearing that it's not left and right. It's up and down, right? That it's a class war. I agree with that. It really is like us versus 100%. Them, not like Republican and Democrat, but like us versus the 1%.
I mean, how many times have we said they're distracting you with the right and the left because it's actually the rich and the poor? And if you would pay attention, I mean, that ship has sailed.
And I agree with that.
You know what I'm saying?
I agree with that to an extent. I agree with that. I do think this should be a class war, and I think we could actually easily win if we could get our shit together and fight this class war. The problem is that the 1% that we should be fighting has done such a good job pitting us against each other that now it's not just like 70s and 80s version of like Republicans and Democrats that are arguing over like tax law. It's like regular sane people are now arguing with a cult.
Yeah, it's like
So,
a patriarchal militia.
Right. So it's like it's like we're fighting side to side. Like if you're listening and not watching my hands, or like it's not. It's like it's like now it feels like if you're a sane person, you are now fighting both ways.
Yeah.
You feel like you have to fight to the side.
Yeah.
To protect yourself from this cult that is rotting your country from the inside out.
Yeah.
But you also want to fight upwards because it's actually the people up top that are instructing that cult to attack itself and attack this country. So then you feel like you're in this corner of like, how the fuck do we get out of here? How do we save this country?
Yeah.
The answer is you don't. The answer is we're in the tower card.
The answer is,
and we have to, it has to crumble.
Speaking up and let it crumble, but like,
and you have to rebuild it.
Be someone that as it's falling, people know where you stand.
Right. We have to rebuild this. And then when we rebuild, it has to be left and right come together.
100%. Like when you were saying like the left and the right as a trick, the thing is like the polarity of that and us screaming about that, like we should have fixed that 5 years ago.
We should have fixed it 50 years ago.
100%. But like, that's when that argument we should have listened to. That ship has so far sailed.
And it fucking crashed and is at the bottom of the ocean.
Exactly. So I just want to point that out because if you're still hearing that argument, it's not untrue.
Bullshit. Right.
It's just outdated. It's too late.
It's impossible now.
Exactly.
So like we're not dealing with like, yes, there are some people on like the right that like, we can work with. I'm not saying it's everybody, but you're actually talking about a cult.
Right.
We've talked about this in episodes, go way back.
Yeah.
We talked about this in our cult episodes. Like MAGA is a cult.
Yeah.
You're not convincing. I'm not convincing X, Y, and Z in my life that they're in a cult. They're not going to believe me.
Yeah. I mean, perfect
Sorry,
segue.
I
No.
us, but
you
like,
didn't drag us because the next thing I was going to talk about is cults.
And that's why you can't, that's why that side is so loud.
Yes.
And so wrong about it.
There is still a feeling of like, well, I don't want to speak up because like, I'm just speaking for what's right.
Right.
That is, it's a no.
Right.
And you see this if you study like Hitler. You like the Nazi, you see all of this where people were just like, well, I believe that, but I'm being quiet because I don't want to cause a problem. That mindset is a human flaw. Right. And it's why, and we continuously underestimate the patriarchy, not you and I, but other people. Right. So like this continues to happen cyclically.
And that's what your fear tells you when you know that there's like a problem that seems really big and really scary.
Yes.
Your fear and your ego says, it can't be that bad. Someone's going to fix this.
Yeah.
That would never happen. It's happening. We are here.
That's your fear trying to deny it.
Right.
You're trying to avoid it by believing that. I get it. We've all been there.
Right.
It's not a judgment. It's just that like, that's
what's happening in your brain.
That's the reasoning. 100%. Okay. Well, since you brought up cults, one of the most, criticized and celebrated episode we've ever done, and TikTok, there's a couple of them ever, is about the Grabovoi codes.
Oh, we're still talking about it?
Oh my God. I screenshotted. I'll look it up while I'm
seriously talking. That was so long ago.
About how many hits it has, but I probably once a day respond to somebody's comment about it. So can you see on the bottom there, can you tell the people how many like view plays that video has?
138,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. I mean, there's millions and trillions of comments.
5,000 likes, almost 600 comments, and 388 saves on TikTok.
Okay. This was years ago. And I'm still fielding. Okay. I just thought I'd bring up one. Do you have something to say? Go ahead.
I was going to say that the fact that you're still dealing with that actually proves what I said about why we can't recommend certain things. Because the Grabovoi codes, we won't launch into it.
No.
But it starts with like manifesting and like sequences and numbers and numerology. Yeah. And that in itself is good.
Yeah.
But like once you start there, then you end up sometimes at the Grabovoi codes. And so that was years ago for us.
Yeah.
But there are people who are like just starting their intuitive journeys, who are learning about numerology, and they're finding it now. And so they're now stumbling upon the Grabovoi codes.
And when you look up hashtag Grabovoi codes on TikTok, our
huge.
videos come up.
Right, exactly.
So then people get mad. But the thing is that people don't, they're like, oh, this is cool. But then they don't like Google the rest of it. And then not only do they use it themselves, but then they tell other people to use it and they teach it, which is another reason why we're so skeptical.
We talked about, right?
Whatever.
Sorry, go ahead. But I just kind of, it's so.
It's crazy. It's making me cough. It's so crazy. But one person recently, I figured I'd just like bring something up about the cult discussion in general. So I had a discussion with this person. I try to have a discussion with people who now, if you start to call me names or threaten me, or if we're being real, the reason that I got off of Facebook was because I couldn't stand being sexually harassed by men on TikTok.
You got that a lot.
On Facebook.
You got that a lot.
It would come as an attack on like, if one time I shared a quote from, what's her name? Greta.
Oh, Thunberg?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like sexually harassed, pictures of penises, okay. So anyways, I'm digressing, but like if you start with me like that kind of stuff on TikTok, you're just blocked. Like I'm done. I don't discuss things with those people.
No.
Okay. All right. Which, that's going to keep happening on Meta now because all the
there's no guidelines standards.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Anyways,
Mark Zuckerberg.
Most of the time, I know. Most of the time, I can bring somebody to be a little bit more open. And I'm pretty good at that. I mean, if you engage with me,
you're very good at that.
If you engage with me, be ready.
No, you're going to have people like spun around and like singing a different tune and they won't realize they're even doing it.
Which is what happened in this particular case. You can go look at the comments. The person's name is Kin, K-I-N.
On TikTok?
If you want to watch the
discourse
of them then going like, yes, I am going to go listen to your podcast about these three podcasts. That's a great idea. Thank you so much. From somebody calling me names.
Nice.
I have a degree in that. I do it, but I don't do it just to be like right. I don't care about that. I do it to like actually hope. Like if you bother commenting, you're trying to engage with me. Yeah. So I know there's a little thread of hope that you might open up a little. So I'll take it. Jamie would never. She hates that shit.
No.
I like the challenge. Okay. So the thing that came in was that I called the Grabovoi codes a cult. Because it is.
It is.
Okay. But first of all, I would just like to correct some things. I get these all the time. Cult is not short for culture. No. The amount of people who say that.
Who's saying that?
All the time. Cult is just short for culture. No, it is not.
Oh,
it has the same origin of a word, same as like cultivate, but it's not.
They don't all mean the same thing.
But I think some of the trouble with the word cult is that this is one of those words that the meaning changed over time.
Correct.
So it used to be like a catch-all term for any group devoted to a specific subject.
Right.
So at one point, if you said you were in a cult of numerology, you just like were in a group of people who studied numerology and loved numerology.
Right.
Now, if you're in a cult, it means something very different.
Right.
And because a lot of people like to enter arguments, mostly men, but who actually have not done any research, and you have entered into an argument in a field, if I've done an episode on it, I've done a lot of research on it. 100%. So think about this.
Right.
I'm just telling you, like in the 1970s is when the term changed, and it had to do with the Patty Hearst trial.
Correct.
Okay. If you want to go look that up, go right ahead. I'm not doing your research for you. In fact, I've done it on a podcast. Do not then ask me for my sources.
Right.
No, go find your own.
Listen. Right.
Idiot. Okay. So I just want to say that like it's very hard to define a cult. We have episodes on it. I don't want to do that this whole time, but this person ended up starting very critical, then opening up, realizing that I don't have a problem with numerology. We think numerology is great. I have a problem with Grabovoi. And if you don't have a problem with somebody who hurts people and steals money and scams people who have just lost children, then you are a problem 100% of the time, just because you like numerology.
You like something.
Makes no fucking sense. Okay. But there's a lot of different definitions. Most of them have to do with like of a cult, of like authoritarian control that creates dependency, extremist beliefs, isolation from society, charismatic leader, Okay. So I just wanted to direct people, for all the people who come at me and say cult is short for culture and that everything in the world is a cult. No.
No.
To Dr. Stephen Hassan, freedomofmind.com. He was someone, I don't know if you remember this because it was a while ago, but he was, I think it was on the That's a Little Bit Culty podcast, which is great if you're into cults. He is a psychologist who works with deprogramming people from cults. He's a specialist in cults. He also has a lot of great resources for deprogramming the Trump supporters in your life if you need some help with that.
Okay.
Check out the website. But you can go there and actually find all kinds of stuff there. Like, I'm not going to read it all to you, but like he talks about undue influence. A destructive cult is a pyramid-shaped authoritarian regime with a person or group of people that have dictatorial control. He talks about like authentic self versus false self in psychology. You see that a lot. Like false self is what cults promote. So you can go there. So go look at the experts. But the thing is, don't come at me with incorrect information.
Correct.
And please stop saying that cult is short for culture. That makes no sense.
No, that's just what people say when they don't want to like own up to something.
I screenshotted 7 different
That's embarrassing.
quotes of that.
Yeah, no, that's embarrassing.
That's their defense to it.
No.
Okay. We also had a lot of requests for different mental health diagnoses episodes. I just wanted to address why we don't have a lot of
I agree. That's a great, I'm glad you're bringing this up.
Okay. We did talk about narcissism. If there is a subject that makes cultural sense for us to talk about, I'm happy to talk about it.
Well, and you're probably going to get there, sorry. Yeah, but narcissism also, that episode, we talked about how narcissism is a spectrum. And sometimes it's just like having narcissistic personality traits. But it also swings to you can have an actual personality disorder. But the entire episode wasn't about like us clinically diagnosing people. We are not trained to do that. That's not our place.
And listen, anytime someone says, would you do an episode on this? We are fucking flattered that you would trust us and want our opinion and want us to do that research. 100% of the time, I'm super grateful. But I just want to explain why we don't do those. And like, I try to like have like a nice response. Like, I'll put it on our list but like, we just got one for bipolar. Like, would you do an episode on bipolar? And the thing is, like, first of all, I'm not an expert in that. I could do research and talk about it, but I don't feel comfortable presenting people just to educate them about bipolar when I'm not a psychologist or a therapist. Like, that doesn't seem right. If there was a reason or like a certain, like something else that we were going to talk about around it, I would present it. But like, I think we have a responsibility to, I don't want to say like stay in our lane, but like
I think
not
we should stay in our lane
about information that we're not expert enough in, or it doesn't make sense for us to be talking about.
No, and we could go and like research it. You could research it and like, bring that information to the podcast, but it wouldn't be something that like you couldn't do on your own. I think what it is that I think people like hearing about that type of thing through the lens of our opinions, but also through the lens of intuition. Like what it's like being an intuitive or an empathic person dealing with someone who has bipolar or is a narcissist or something like that. Like, I think that's what sort of sets us apart. That's what our lane is.
Agreed.
But like I think it gets risky and it could become irresponsible if we start talking about things that we are not properly educated in.
110%. Listen, if I, in my travels, or Jamie in her travels, meet someone who is an expert in bipolar and they want to come on the podcast,
100%.
I would bring them on and we would talk about it, like if that made sense for an episode. But go find someone who's like an expert in that. There's got to be podcast episodes about that.
100%.
So
we're also not just going to seek out like random experts.
Right. We're not going to seek out random experts and like not know their credibility or
just to
be a good guest or like interrupt our dynamic. Like, no. So we very carefully consider what we talk about and when and why. And like just to, I want to make it clear that we're not doing it because we're afraid of criticism. We get plenty of
No,
that.
it's not criticism. It's a fear of being irresponsible.
Exactly.
And harming people.
Exactly. Like,
right.
we get a lot, we had, not currently, but we did get like some flack about talking about being neurotypical and its connection to intuition.
We did. Yeah.
And I think part of people's trouble with it is that I was still skirting around identifying as autistic.
Yep.
And that at the time of filming that and recording that, a very close family member of mine had just been diagnosed with it, who I'm not going to say who they are. So to expose all of that would have been too much.
Correct.
So I understand people being like, well, neither of you, I mean, you have ADHD, I'm autistic. Mm-hmm. But I also, I mean, there's real consideration on whether you want an official diagnosis to things. Like, there's so much that's layered. Yep. So like, but that episode was about the connection between being neurotypical and being intuitive, and that it's not one or the other. That was the whole point of the episode.
Right.
If there was like a thing that made sense to do that on bipolar or another diagnosis, then I could see doing an episode. But just to be like, here, where we know a lot about this, I don't feel comfortable.
No, and we also weren't talking about like neurodiversity as like, you know, implementing protocols or like treatment plans. No. Like that's not our lane.
No, exactly. Okay. Another thing that we got asked about a lot to do an episode on is grief. And so, yes, we will do an episode on grief. I think that Jamie is a fucking all-star at grief. And so I don't mean like grieving. I mean like helping people with grief. You're good at grieving too, but
not only the client,
exactly.
The dead
so I think you would have a lot of incredible information. I try very hard to understand grief as a concept because it's so intuitive.
Correct. It is intuitive.
And our society does not really, I mean, because it's intuitive, our society doesn't do a good job of understanding it or having great resources for it.
Right.
So I would love to do an episode on that. I will just say, like, one of the things that like I watch Jamie do really well when it comes to like supporting someone through grief is she won't let people be isolated. You'll make sure that there's a line to you if they need it.
Right.
And I think that if you can just take one little thing, I think that
would be a good pro tip. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I just have two quick other things.
Okay.
I have to address. Do you remember in the Claire Aliens, Claire Gustins episode where I said that I get the hiccups every time I eat bread?
Oh, yeah. And you told me this.
Okay. Flooded.
Yes.
Okay. So one of the many things I love about our beautiful listeners is that they will send me like articles and research that they've done.
Oh.
Okay. So this, of course, is not like a well-researched topic, but
other people experience this.
Yeah. And a lot of people who have gluten sensitivities get it. Mm-hmm. Okay. But the thing that I was blown away by was how many people were telling me I'm also hypermobile.
Come on.
Okay.
Really?
So I looked into this. A few people sent me some articles, but there's something to do with, because you have too much mobility in your joints, there's a part of your spine that pushes on a nerve in your neck and causes you to get, because like hiccups are caused by like the nerves near your esophagus. It causes those to trip. And when you chew bread, you use your jaw in this like different way that they think causes this. There's been a few medical things about it.
Not a lot.
Yeah. And it's a lot of it is people who have Ehlers-Danlos, which is a hypermobility like diagnosis.
Yes.
Like a spectrum as well. But I just wanted to say that in case that also happens to you, that through everyone commenting on it, I learned that there's most likely a connection there.
That's so cool.
So makes sense. I would like to know if you also get the hiccups when you eat bread, if you're also hypermobile.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's incredible. That's sort of the beauty of TikTok also,
I know.
Which unfortunately I think we're losing. But it's like that information sharing.
Yeah. Okay. So lastly, I just wanted to clarify something because somebody was really mad on TikTok at me. I guess it was at us, but because I was answering it, it was directed at me. And it was that we need to open our minds to the ideas of other dimensions and that we are like constantly shitting on that. So first of all, I don't really consciously remember shitting on the ideas of other dimensions because I do believe in other dimensions. But I do think it might have been an example of us like making fun of that, like people making intuition too weird shit and like using that language.
It's just us illustrating this sort of like extremist stereotype.
Yeah.
Of like the jangly bracelets, the other dimensions, like that sort of extreme archetype of an intuitive person that we use as an example. Just like we say, like you see like dead grandma, like that's our go-to is like it's just showing
us talking about a 10-step program. Like these are examples of things.
Right.
So I don't specifically remember this. This was like a very long criticism. It was posted on like our Spotify, like a comment on an episode. And I listened back to some of the episode to try to find where we said it and I couldn't. So I don't know if they just heard like a little clip or whatever. But it is a problem when people talk about intuition in a way that is so inaccessible. Like to me, it's such a red flag.
Correct.
That you're heading into cult territory when you're not making it everyday and accessible.
Right.
I know people don't like that, but I just wanted to clarify that we are open to that idea.
Right.
I do think that there's like other dimensions, but like I don't want to talk about it in a way that's like really trippy and weird or really too much at all unless it applies to something because it's not, how does that help anybody really?
Right. And let's be honest, like you can find so many other podcasts that do it
I know.
And talk about it that way. Go listen to that podcast. Yeah. Like that's not us. We're not here to talk about like that. We do talk about, that's actually not fair. We actually do talk about it.
Yeah.
We do talk about other dimensions and really sort of like typically intuitive things. We don't talk about it in the way that you like it, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like we're not here for that. We're not like Mother God talking about fucking aliens landing to take us up to the mothership. We're not like, that's not how we are talking about intuition.
Right.
And
intentionally.
Right. And like, do I think that anyone talking about like dimension, see, I'm being nice about it now. I don't need to be nice about it. This is our podcast. But like, do I think that everyone who talks about other dimensions is in a cult and is no, I don't think that.
Right.
But when you talk about it like that and you frame it like that, that's like where you're aligning yourself.
Yeah.
And we are not doing that. We are talking about intuition in its practicality, in its everyday use, and how intuition is for everybody because everybody is intuitive. So we want to present it in a way that's accessible to everybody.
Exactly. And if you recall, there was a while where like, remember there was stuff about the vaccine, like either stopping you or putting you into 3D.
Yes. Oh yeah. 4D, no, and 5D and 5D, bullshit.
Whatever. Yeah.
Correct.
All red flaggy talk.
Yes.
None of it makes sense.
No.
Dimensions are a thing that is studied in like science. Like I'm not
exactly.
So are we open to the 100%? We're open to it. Do we call out the red flaggy language of people making it so fucking weird and talking over people and trying to attract people into a web of deception? Absolutely.
Yes.
So,
and we actually are more likely to talk about dimensions because we talk about how science and intuition overlap.
Yeah.
We're actually more on board with that.
Yeah.
But we don't talk about it in that way. So it offends people.
And the thing is like, our whole thing is that we want you to feel like you're sitting and talking with us.
Right.
As your friends.
Right.
Okay. We happen to be experts in these things, but we don't want to talk above your head. We don't want to talk in a way that
make you feel like you're not like special enough to be talking with us.
Or that you have to change yourself to have access to a dimension or some bullshit. Like,
right.
Never. If you want to enter into a conversation with us about dimensions, we're both into it. We 100%. Want to listen to what you have to say. But if you start going down the bad path that we talked about before,
we're not doing it.
Nope. Stop there. Right. We don't do that. And so, anyways,
right.
We are open to it. We do criticize it.
Yeah,
you can have both.
And speaking of criticism, I have something I'd like to add.
I love it. Let's hear
it. If you are listening to an episode,
yeah,
I would like you to look at the information on your phone or on your CarPlay screen or wherever you're listening.
Yeah.
And if the number is like episode 10 or episode 50,
yeah,
and you don't like the sound quality of it, please don't fucking write to us about it.
Yeah. Right. That was like 100 episodes ago.
When we were like literally doing it in COVID.
Yeah. Right.
Like, I get it. Like, sometimes our sound quality has been off.
But it was never bad. It just wasn't ever.
We're also
early on, it wasn't perfect.
We're doing this on our own. We don't have sponsors. We're not in a studio.
Yeah.
Like,
I'll tell you where, if you feel that way, I'll tell you where to send the donation.
100%.
To the Red Cross.
Or to our new studio.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, yeah, get a new hobby.
You know what I mean? And like, but if you're like, oh, the sound quality on this is tough. Like, look at it. Is it episode?
It's like episode
62?
6 from the year 2020.
Right.
Like, well, obviously we were not in the same location and we did not have a mic. Like,
we weren't even in the same place.
That's what I mean. You were at
houses.
your house and I was at my house.
Like, I mean, I get it. Like, yeah, like, can you send in your feedback? Yes.
Yeah.
But be kind, dude. Like, is this the biggest problem?
Right. I mean,
fuck.
I mean, I could go into how, like, that's a great way to avoid your feelings by, like, hyper focusing on
the sound quality. Because what we're saying might make you feel a little shaky. You know what I mean?
Like, ooh, it cut out a little right there.
Right.
Oh my gosh, will you be okay? A static noise happened to you. Oh my God.
Yeah.
You know, like, you'll be okay.
Tough.
Sound quality's great now, so step off, bitches. Do I hit the microphone sometimes? Yes, I do. Do I cough? Yes, because I'm still suffering from whatever this mystery illness is that I started the year with.
The month-long illness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, too bad.
Yeah.
Okay. On that note, let's go get some coffee.
Okay, bye.
We're doing our best. Bye.
Hey everyone, Heather and I have an ask for you. If you love this episode or if you love the IGG, can you do us a favor? We need you to go onto whatever platform you listen on and download, subscribe, like, love, whatever it's asking you to do. Can you go do those things for us on the platforms that you listen on? It would mean so much to us.
Thanks for listening to our episode. For a way to get in touch with us, please visit our website, intuitivegirlsguide.com. We love hearing your feedback on our episodes.